Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Lead Different podcast premiere. We've got Don Barden in the house today, and I'm excited to introduce him to you guys. He's been such a great guy. You're working with the right people when you get a call the week of the event, and Don is asking me, hey, Dan, what else can I do for you? I know I'm working with the right guy when I'm getting those kinds of questions. So, Don, thank you so much for number one, for being on the show. Number two, for bringing such a great topic to mind. I've been teasing the audience about it. I say, hey, look, there's a breakthrough study that's been done that predicts that women are going to have the majority of the leadership position in the world in the next 8 to 12 years. And I've got the guy who conducted the study on the show. So we're getting a lot of attention and comments on that. What's exciting for you right now, Don?
I'm loving every bit of this. Thank you so much, Dan. Again, as always, thank you for your work, man. You're taking the message out there about leadership and why and everything else, and it's just amazing. But we spent the past three and a half years studying this phenomena that's occurring. And between the year 2028 and 2032, women are going to take over global leadership. And by global leadership, I mean from the local deli to parliament. It's going to be a game-changing event that's going to be so impactful for the economy, so impactful for the cultural construct of who we are. It's going to be one of the biggest economic events probably in our lifetime. And it's well-deserved. It's a great thing. Everything about it is positive. But like I tell people, the best thing that we learned in this study is that it's not a girl thing. It's just something girls do, which means we can teach guys to do it. It's the world, the economy, the industries, everything is converging at the right time. The math supports it. We know it's going to happen. And it's just awesome. So, and I'm saying this from a guy's perspective. I can't wait. It's going to be fun.
It's also good, because the work that we do at Why Not Leadership is all about finding diversity. And it's not so much, that diversity of ethnicity or diversity of gender. It's really a diversity of thought. And that's really what your study really brings out. Women, for the most part, naturally do some things naturally that men do not. And we're going to talk about that in the interview. So I'm not going to give it away here. But Don, one of the things I want to make sure we talk about, you're the author of the Perfect Plan. And those of you who have not picked up this book, it is a great book. I read everything people recommend to me. Jackie Joy said, you need to read this. And I read it. There's so many great lessons in the Perfect Plan, Don. So you've got another book coming out. Plus you've got this study, a book based on this study. Tell me what are you working on right now that people can get excited about, similar to the way they got excited about the Perfect Plan?
Well, thank you. I mean, we're working on the concept of here come the girls. I mean, it's straightforward. And one of my favorite things I've said for years is luck favors the prepared. And if you are prepared when things just happen to line up your way, wow, it seems to be a better moment. And I think Thomas Jefferson said, I don't believe in luck, but I find the harder I work at it, the more I find. So if we know this thing is going to occur in the next few years, what can we start doing today to be fully prepared? What can we do to say, hey, look, this is going to be a great economic event. I don't want to be left behind. I don't want to be playing catch up. So people come to us all the time and say, hey, look, let's talk about this. Can you engage with us and help us out? And the answer is yes. So if anybody wants to go to my website, it's donbarden.com. Or if they want to call me or reach out on LinkedIn, just find me. And we're happy to share free copies of the ebook, do whatever we can to help and serve people, especially the folks that come through your world, Dan, because I'm telling you, what you're doing is amazing. And we're just grateful to be here.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Don. Meet Dr. Watson Jordan. And we got Jackie Joy, who I know you're very familiar with. And, Watson says, chance favors a prepared mind. I love that quote. I love the quote that you brought up. The harder I work, the luckier I get. And that's absolutely true. It's all about putting in the reps and just getting started. This week I had a lot of experiences where I talked about the fact that, at the end of the day, just try it. This podcast began, I know my first episode wasn't perfect, and I know this one isn't perfect, but we get better the more we do things. So repetition and reps, I tell people just keep doing it and do it. And you can always fix something. You can't fix it, right? If you don't do anything, you can't fix it. You can't make it better. We're going to make it better. I'm thankful for Jackie bringing you into my world. Jackie Joy, big shout out to you. Thank you for the introduction to Don. I know you and I are going to be getting a chance to talk again next week. I've got a big week next week with the Y conference. So all our Y certified coaches from around the world are going to be converging in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I've got a keynote that I've got to prepare for that. But I'm just blessed to have you in my circle, and I want to share this interview with you guys, and let us know what you think. Don and I are going to fall into the background. I'm going to be monitoring the chat, whether you're on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or on YouTube. Just throw in your questions, throw in your comments. We're going to try to feature as many of you as we can. We're going to try to get Don to answer as many of the questions as possible. But in the meantime, don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Make sure we love that you listen to it. And nothing is more frustrating to me, Don, and I'm sure for you.
Yeah.
Oh, I listen to your podcast all the time. And I'm saying, are you subscribed? And they're like, no, subscribe, hit the like button, help us, help the algorithm get more different leaders in touch with our Lead Different podcast, like Don Barden. And so, hey, without any further ado, Sunil, why don't you hit the play button? Don and I will fade into the background.
Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead Different, because great leaders change the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. I've got a great guest for you today. I am introducing you to Dr. Don Barden, Ph.D. He is a classically trained economist with an extensive expertise in global technology management, international business, and behavioral economics. He's based out of Atlanta, Georgia. He's a distinguished author, speaker, advisor, and corporate executive known for his revolutionary unfair advantage theories that challenge modern sales and communication techniques. Dr. Barden specializes in corporate culture and leadership, where his engaging, interactive style breaks down barriers and empowers teams to achieve extraordinary results. His leadership has driven teams to exceed $1 billion in annual sales and revenue growth. He's highly sought after for his insights. Dr. Barden advises top corporations, political leaders, private schools, and faith-based organizations. He also serves as a trustee and past chairman for the Summit Counseling Center in Atlanta and supports the U.S. Army Rangers Sponte Foundation. So without any further ado, let me introduce you to Dr. Don Barden. Don Barden, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Dan. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for being here with us today. I'm looking forward to having you on the show. Let me fix the screen. There you are. We want to make your face the premier face. Thanks for being on. Listen, you're connected to one of my favorite people, Jackie Joy, and she's one of my favorite people in the world. And she introduced us. And after she introduced us, she gave me a copy of your book, The Perfect Plan, which I've read and enjoyed so much. That's the book that put you on the map. But today we're going to talk about another book that you've got coming called Here Come the Girls. And I don't even want to say anything about it till we get to it, because as the father of a 35-year-old corporate executive who's a marketing director at a big pharma company, I can't wait for her to hear this interview and the rest of those powerful female leaders that are out there in the world. So what are you excited about today, Dr. Barden?
Well, I'm excited to be on your show. Thank you. Before we even get down my path, I just want to say thank you for being you, dude. I tell you, this commitment you have, and not only the why system, but you're helping people be better. But what you're really doing is giving people permission to be free to be themselves. And that to me is the most liberating thing. And that's what holds most people back in life, right? Is they try to be something they're not, or try to make somebody else into something they're not. And what you and your training does, and I'm a big, big fan, is you give them permission to be free. And then they move all these obstacles out of their way, and they realize that they are superheroes. They can do some great things. So thank you. But I just want to say thank you for doing your work before we get started. It's awesome.
Well, listen, that's high praise from you, Don, because we know what an impact the work that you've had. And, I mentioned it at the end there, you work with the 75th Ranger Regiment. That's an organization that that's near and dear to my heart. It was a big part of my maturity as a young Army officer to go through Army Ranger training, airborne training down at Fort Benning, Georgia, back when it was Fort Benning, Georgia.
Yeah,
It really shaped.
now.
Yeah, it's shaped who I was as a leader, and it shaped a lot of what I do today. So thank you for the work you do to help make those Ranger leaders even better.
Well, my honor. I love every bit of it. They know they can call me anytime and I'll be there. And I know they do the same for me. So it's a great organization.
Well, let's start with one of the things I like to start with, Don, is going through because a lot of our listeners are fellow Y coaches, a lot of people who use the YOS system in their coaching, or they use it in their organizations, a lot of HR leaders. So I like to let people know, hey, who do we have on the show? And they're probably just from the intro, we can tell who you were, but let me break it down for everybody. So Don's why is to find a better way and share it with others. He does that in everything he does. His how is to challenge the status quo and do things differently. He often asks the question, why do we have to do it that way? And I love that he's also an economist that's doing this stuff, because he's looking at ways to do things better by challenging the way they're being done in order to contribute. So his what is contribute. He wants to make a difference in the world. And man, when I read The Perfect Plan, when I talk to you in the pre-show, I can see all of those traits in you. You're a guy who's constantly looking for a better way to do things. And the only way you're going to find better ways to do things is by challenging the way they're currently being done. So you challenge the way things are being done in order to find better ways, in order to contribute. And you can see that because you're part of the Ranger Foundation. So you're always looking to make a difference, make a positive impact in the lives of others. Yeah. I know I wasn't the coach that took you through that. Jackie Joy took you through your YOS discovery.
Oh yeah.
How do you see that in yourself? Looking back, have you always been a guy that's always innovated, always challenged the status quo, and always wanted to make a difference?
Yeah. And I think that's just your wiring, right? It's your instinctual wiring of who you are. And when you figure that out and you're free not to try to pretend to be something else, you're good at it. But yeah, I'm sure as a child, I always knew it, but you're trying to fit in. And you're trying to get sucked into everybody else's mediocrity. And that's a big word when you say mediocrity, because it's assuming a measurement. But if you're trying to be something you're not, you're going to regress to the mean. You're going to regress to center, right? But once you're free and you find out, hey, I'm really wired to challenge ideas. I'm really wired to think outside the box. Or in my case, you always go, what box? I don't even get that concept, right? So when you realize that as an individual, you're free to be you. And I knew it as a child, but you don't know that you're free.
Right.
And it wasn't until later on in life where I started just kind of accepting myself. So when Jackie took me through the system, it was almost like, duh, that's me, right? So it's that, which is freaky, because it shows you how accurate it is. So especially for somebody who's struggling and they feel like they're being held back, it's a great assessment to just state the obvious, but it's really what you do with it, right? It's like anything. It's you can go to a training session and it feels like a warm bath and you feel good about yourself, but you got to give yourself a bath tomorrow, man. You got to get out there, and do it. So it's really about taking these tools, taking the freedom, taking the gifts that you've been given, your instinctual awareness, and be free to be you. And go out there and find a place where you're the right fit. Find a place where you're in a culture that celebrates you and lets you do it. And we're not talking about social construct. We're talking about your skills, what you're bringing to the table. And what I found is, if you're wired to be a librarian, you will be the happiest person in the world if you just go be a librarian. If you're wired to be, something like an engineer or a designer or an artist, go do that. Don't worry about what everybody else says. And you'll find happiness is on the other side of that. And but it starts with just your ability to be free. And I think that's what you do better than anybody else. So again, I really appreciate it. But it was funny when Jackie took me through it. I was like, yeah, I know that. but I'd already gotten to the point where I felt a little bit freer in life.
Yeah. One of the things, and I think, look, when we talk to senior leaders, people who have been doing this for a while, you're obviously very self-aware. That's the comment we get. Hey, I knew that about myself. One of the comments we do hear is, hey, now you've given me some good language that I can use to describe who I am to other people very succinctly. But with the how of challenge and better way of being an innovator, one of the things I've learned, and I want to get into what put you on the map, but just a quick question, because this is really helpful for others who have the how of challenge, which I do also. We've always been different. And in school, we're the kid that couldn't sit still, sometimes got in trouble because we
were ADHD before it was cool. That's what you're saying.
You hit it right on the head. I had a
Yeah.
another PhD, cognitive psychologist on, and she talked about
Oh,
the
yeah.
gift of ADHD. The fact of
Oh,
the matter
yeah.
is this: when you're diagnosed with ADHD, we're not we're not. It's not a deficit, and it's not a disorder. She says
The
it's
gift.
different. It's a gift, and what we
Mhm.
can do, what people like Don Barden can do, is take something boring like economics and make it
Yeah.
exciting, because he brings, when everybody else is paying attention and just following the rules and what everybody else is doing, you're looking at it differently. And that
Yeah.
led to you writing a book that put you on the map, The Perfect Plan. It's a
Yeah.
book. It's mandatory reading at Microsoft, at Coca-Cola, and with the US Army Rangers, who you are still consulting for. What
Yeah.
is, talk about the 4 C's. What's the most important thing you're going to get if you read The Perfect Plan?
Well, again, it's sort of what you were talking about too, a little bit on the why profile is free to be you. So what the perfect plan was, it was a Wall Street funded study. So we went out and we wanted to know what the best leaders in the world were doing differently than everyone else. And one of the overwhelming things that popped out early was the challenge concept. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be wired for challenge, but they had this ability to not want to change people's minds. In other words, great leaders would go out and they wouldn't say, no, you've got to think like I think. It was just the opposite. They would say, you're free to think how you think. But that means that you have to change the way you think about how you think about your thinking. Don't change your mind. Just consider changing how you think about things. Because a lot of people are indoctrinated into the corporate world and they think, oh, I've got to think like my boss does, or I've got to follow this social construct so I can be fitted in and wanted. And what these great leaders were doing was like, no, 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 no. You're a beautiful individual. I need your skills. I need your talent. I don't want to know how you do what you do. I just want to know that you know how to do what you do and you do it well. You are free to be you. And they take the skills with the right person, they put it out there. But there was still this overwhelming, not just responsibility between the marketplace, but this attraction that these leaders had to not only the market, but their employees and anybody that was around them. So what we studied was really understanding why they did what they did, understanding their concept of mindset, understanding their concept of respecting other people, which is a big, big deal. For example, the golden rule, which most of us learned in 5th grade, but a lot of people forget about it. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Great for 5-year-olds in the sandbox so they don't beat each other up. You want to be nice, so people will be nice to you. We get that. It's a terrible idea as an adult and as leaders to treat people the way you want to be treated. As an adult, we call that selfish. So the original translation wasn't what it morphed into in English. The original translation was not do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. It was do unto others as they would have you do unto them. Treat people the way they want to be treated. And these leaders had this uncanny ability to use either their own insights or tools like what you've got here with the Y program and say, okay, I know who this person is. They're the perfect fit for this job and this career path. I want to get out of their way. What do I need to do? And so it was about their ability to treat people with so much respect, even customers, that they didn't try to make them like themselves. They tried to make them free, to do what they wanted to do. And the process that they went through that by understanding the emotional connection to that. But more importantly, it was a process that they went through on communication. They opened up every conversation with a very sincere attitude of gratitude. They clearly articulated what the mission and the orientation was, but then they made it easy by getting out of their way. They would either say, you can outsource success to me and my company, we'll do this for you, or let us help you be better. You tell us how you want to do it, but either way, it's going to be easy. So they had this process that they went through, but at the end, what we learned in these great leaders was it was never about themselves. They got up every day and they ran to work to serve other people, their customers, their team, their family, everyone. And then they have, if you really press them, they'd have this aha moment like, oh yeah, I'm an engineer, or oh yeah, I'm a doctor, or oh yeah, I own a bunch of restaurants. Their career was the oh yeah part of it. Their commitment and their mindset to go out and serve people helped make them better. And in turn, everybody moves together. Everybody accepts challenges together. Everybody grows together. And you get to do a greater good for other people, your customers, or whoever it is. That was the difference. But there was a unifying cadence to it and formula that we talk about in the book and when we do training. So it's a lot of fun.
You know, you brought up so many great things. So the golden rule, I love it. We talk about it in the work that I do. We call it the golden rule versus the platinum rule. And
Right?
the platinum rule is treat others the way they want to be treated,
Yeah,
because we make that mistake. And you talk
yeah,
about hiring those leaders and letting them be free to be themselves. I had a guest on recently, Paul McCarthy, and you know, I'm on a roll with all these PhDs, but Paul McCarthy studied the fact he calls himself a fired leader because he was hired because he was fresh thinking, because he is innovative. So
yeah.
every letter in fired stood for something. I think it was fresh thinking, innovative, the real and accountable, expressive
That's
and
good.
challenging, and direct and transparent. He said, you know, so I had these bosses, I'd go through this tough interview process, then they'd hire me. And then as soon what would happen, and again, this is probably what we're going to get into later. Not great
Yeah,
leaders don't like it when you turn that fresh thinking and that challenging on them. It's great. Hey, we love you, Paul, when you're challenging everybody else, but don't challenge me, the boss,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Don't bring
yeah,
me
yeah,
your fresh ideas. You do what I tell you to do. So it's that putting people in a box. And great bosses are good at saying, hey, you know what? Maybe I do have some things to work on. So
yeah,
thank you for getting my attention on that one
yeah,
thing that I need to work on, or maybe a couple of things, or
yeah,
maybe just calling the baby ugly. So the whole point of
yeah,
Paul's book is they would hire him for these qualities, and then he'd get fired for the exact same qualities he got hired for,
yeah,
because the leadership wasn't strong enough to manage him in a positive way so he could
yeah.
be the person he is and make the biggest difference for the
Oh yeah.
organization. I'm sure you've seen that, Don.
Oh, all day long. We always say with some organizations, the reason they love you is the same reason they hate you. They love you because they want you to help them grow and do things, but they're like, well, wait a minute. You might be taking me outside of my own capabilities as a leader. And instead of saying, look, this is about hiring more better leaders, they sit there and say, oh, well, we're only going to grow to my own level, which again sucks you back to the mediocrity or regress to the mean of where that person is. And I always tell people, and I think this is very, very important. You never want to be the smartest person in the room. A leader knows this. They never want to be the smartest person in the room. They want to be in a room where everybody's getting smarter together. And that's a solvent theory. And when you think about that, then you let everything go. And the irony was the title of the book, Perfect Plan, is actually a play on words. A word it only means what you meant it to be. So today we use terminology like nostalgia. I'm really that means to remember the pain. That's what nostalgia means. So but it's okay. In English, it just means that you're remembering good times. Passion doesn't mean hot and heavy. Passion means that you're willing to do anything, including accept great pain to accomplish a mission. That's what the word passion means. But perfect's the same way. So when we got to the word perfect on it, perfect does not mean that it's finite or done. Perfect literally translates to mean always becoming. So if you were perfect, you were always becoming, you were always getting better. There is no perfect, it's finished, it can't be improved upon. It's the process that you're constantly going through. That process is perfect because it's allowing you to grow. And I think what you were just referring to are leaders who are not comfortable with that. And that's a shame because to be perfect means that you're always becoming, you're always growing, you, your team, and everybody else. And that's a big thing that people have to get through. And I think what you're putting together allows them to do that. But I know there's a hurdle to it. I mean, there's some people that just say no. I'm afraid to risk anything. I'm traditionally successful. And because I'm traditionally successful, I can't take any risk. I'm not doing anything, even to the point of not growing anymore because I've got to protect this brand because I'm scared. Where in reality, what they find out is once they get out and they accept that they want to always be becoming, they accept they want to grow, then they accept there's going to be future failures and things. But you're talking about 10, 20, 30x growth over half a point growth. So, pick your poison. You want to grow 10x, there's going to be some bumps and grinds. If you want to just sit and hold on and pretend, fine. We'll see you on the other side. Right. So it's okay. Some people are just that way.
Well, I'm all about growing 10x. I know you see Ben Hardy's book behind me. 10x is easier than 2x, right?
Yeah, he wrote it with Dan Sullivan. It's one of my favorite people.
Dan Sullivan is really good friends with my coach, Jerry Lujan. So, there's that connection of the people that do it well, just kind of do it well, and they kind of run in the same circle. So I love that we have that connection.
And they share, by the way. They
Yes.
never hoard it. They share. They'll tell you anything. When we were studying these elite leaders, there not a single one of them said, "Oh, I can't tell you our secret." They said, "If I tell you what we're doing, will you promise me that everybody will hear this? Everybody will get access to it. And you'll be clear about it," because they want everybody to prosper. They do not believe in competition. That's another play on words. Competition comes from the Greek word compenda, and it means the same. So when somebody says, "Oh, we're a competitive team this year," you're really saying you're just same as everybody else, right? Or we have
Right.
competitive rates. Great, you have the same rates as everybody else. So they don't want to be that way. They want to be creative. They want everybody to grow together, and I think that's a beautiful mindset of elite leaders.
Well, it's the difference between abundance and scarcity. You know, I believe
Absolutely.
there's 8 billion people in this world that need what we have. We're not going
Oh,
to get
yeah.
to all of them. And you know, I think Dave Duran, who I had on the show on recently, he talked about, you know, his goal is to get to that exit interview. And you know, we've all got that exit interview, whatever your beliefs are. I believe in a God that's going to look at me and say, "Hey, Daniel, here's the potential that I gave you." And I hope he says, "Here's what you did." I hope he doesn't
Yeah.
say, "Here's the potential I gave you, and here's what you did." You know,
Yeah.
I want him to say, "Hey, well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Love
you you
wins.
took you
Right?
took what I gave you, and you made even more than I expected. Even if we can at least meet the agenda." But
Oh, yeah.
one of the things,
Can I say one thing on this? I always wrap up my speeches if I'm in the mood for it, and sometimes you can see the air suck out of the room because
right?
they're like, "Oh, where's he going to go with this?" I always say, "Look, of all my travels, I think I've been around the world 8 times now. Of all my travels, of the millions of people that I've met and interacted with and studied and been purposeful about it, had the chance to serve and work with, I've learned a universal truth, and that is that there's only one way to get to heaven." And then that's when the crowd goes silent. Like, "Oh, where's he going to go with this? He's about to
Right.
start preaching." And I'm like, "It's not what you think." I said, "I'm convinced of all the travels in the world, and I'm a faith-based person. I'm a Christian, but I'll tell you, there's only one way to get to heaven, and that's to help somebody else get there first. And
Yes.
if you can do that by a single act of kindness that you never saw, if you can do that by giving somebody their first job and training them in ways that it might not show up for 25 years, but they're going to look back and go, there was this old guy I used to work for," which is me and you, right? And, you know, that old guy I used to work for told me this thing and it changed the trajectory of my life. And now I'm employing 100 people or 1,000 people, or we're doing these donations, we're doing these scholarships. The ripple effect by helping somebody else before yourself is we can't even calculate it, right? So why not be that person? And I think that's what real leadership is about.
Well, it's abundance versus scarcity. You know what? There's plenty for all of us. Let's make the pie bigger. Let's not
Yeah.
worry about which slice of the pie
Yeah.
we're getting. Let's make the pie bigger. Let's show more people how to do this, and we're all going to get better together. You
Oh,
bring
yeah.
people along with you. I love that you said that, Don. So here's what I want to make sure we get to is you've got a new book releasing in the
Yeah.
next few months. You've done
Yep.
all the work, got an actual book almost ready to publish. And this is a major seismic shift in leadership. And I want you to talk about it because one of the things you mentioned in the pre-show is women taking over a majority or a large part of the leadership positions globally because they're better at it. And so all the guys in the room, we just sucked the air out of the room, right? On the guys, and all the women are standing at the edge of their seat. They want to hear, Don, what is it that makes women such good leaders that you predict that they're going to be taking over a large part of the leadership positions around the world?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that. Every guy on the planet knows this already. We just don't like to talk about it, right? We've known it since Adam and Eve. So it's not that big of a deal to a guy to admit it. But, you know, so let me put on my econ hat. I'll put my professor hat on for a second. So I teach behavioral economics, which is about looking to the future and predicting why people are going to make decisions they do. I love a lot of my peers. 9 out of 10 economists love to tell you what happened today and mysteriously how they predicted it a couple of weeks ago, but you never can find the paper on it. So that's okay to talk about why something happened in the past tense. I prefer to look at the future and talk about what's probably going to happen. And sometimes if you can combine social construction with mathematics, with just momentum, it's not just a probability, it is an inevitability. And that's what we've got. The math supports this, the social construct supports it, and every man on the planet who's ever lived has known this for a long time, but the time has come that it's becoming very, very real. So we look back, I had this idea really probably about 10 years ago. I didn't start working on it until 5 years ago because we were looking at the math. And I was saying, hey, look, we go through generational waves. There's obviously the baby boom of the greatest generation. There's the 50s and 60s. There's things that happen where we can track the future and say when this population boom gets to a certain age, doing a certain way with the access they have to education and everything else, we're going to see some really cool things happen. Well, I was looking at that and I decided to start thinking about some things that I kind of observed, but I couldn't really get my head around it. And when we were interviewing great leaders, the female leaders that we were interviewing had a different approach to it than the male leaders. But that wasn't the intent of the original study. So it kind of always stayed on me that women have this thing about them that makes them special, in particular when it comes to leadership. So we started thinking about it, and I did the math behind it. And I was looking at the population curve and assigning social events that occurred. Everything from the birth control pill, which gave women choices in their careers to continue on with a career, to the rise of women in multiple fields, medicine, dental, finance, economics, manufacturing. Because really, if we look back at it with honesty, the reason men have been the dominant gender, if you really want to say that, is a simple answer. It's red muscle mass. Guys are better at cutting down trees, plowing fields, and protecting the family from the pterodactyl or the T-Rex than the female is. That's just muscle mass. It has nothing to do with anything. But prior to the Industrial Revolution, men took advantage of it and created a patriarchal system. Now, I always tell students, I tell clients too, please don't judge the past, ever. Don't judge the past because, one, there's more things going on than what you know. And second, we are somebody else's past. In other words, we're going to be judged. And I think what's going to happen is a funny thing. We talk about all the great advances we have in medical science right now, but there's going to be a time 50, 100, 150 years from now where people are looking back at us as barbarians. They're going to say, oh my God, they used to do surgery on people. They used scalpels and cut people and stitched them back up. They're barbarians. They're not going to be able to comprehend why we think it's the greatest advancement in history, right? So be careful. And I always tell people, do not judge the past. But we can look at it with pretty good certainty and say, red muscle mass, they created a patriarchal system, women, everybody had gender roles. That's just life. But then the Industrial Revolution happened and it started more increase. And then today's revolution of technology and things come out. So we don't necessarily need red muscle mass like we used to have. Machines plow fields. Now, yeah, there's bricklayers and there's oil well riggers and stuff like that. And if a woman can do it, God bless them, let them do it. But guys are real good at that stuff. But it's not that way anymore. So now women, when you look at this rise they've had in society and the ability to do it, it's going to peak with the population curve in leadership because leaders, when somebody says a leader is born or that person's born leader, they don't know what they're talking about. Leaders are trained. You might have some characteristics in it, but those characteristics just tell you the path that's best for your leadership style. It doesn't mean you're going to be a good leader or a bad leader. Leaders are trained. So now the female population curve has been trained for 20 to 25 years. Equal access. I know we've got a long way to go. I know there's still things out there, but bottom line, it's pretty much a level playing field. So we can look at the math and say between the year 2028 and 2032, women are going to take over all of the global leadership. Now, not 100%, but it's going to be more than the majority. And I'm talking about everything from the local deli around the corner to parliament. It's going to be dominated by women. And that's a good thing. So what we've been doing over the past 3.5 years is studying these women and saying, hey, look, we really want to study you. The math says it's going to happen between 28 and 2032. We can look at economics now and we can remove hyper performers from the population and say, these people that created these billion-dollar overnight companies, they're awesome. Let's throw them out. Let's look at what women have been doing compared to guys. And it's about 3-to-1 in production. So then the obvious scientific question is, how'd you do it? What's the secret, girls? Tell us what's happening.
What's the secret sauce? Everybody wants to know what's the secret sauce.
Yeah, they do. But again, like we said earlier, great leaders, male or female, share it. There was no hoarding whatsoever. In fact, I was asked when we just finished a study, because all the academics is done, it's going to be published soon. And then the book is coming out that's actually readable. It's not the academic version. But I was asked one time, when did you reach saturation? When did you realize that the population that you were studying was there, that you were on the right track? And I said, the second person we interviewed out of thousands. And they said, how did you know after it's 2 people? And I said, because I kept seeing the same movie over and over and over again. These ladies were telling me the same thing. They were unrelated. They didn't know each other. They had different paths in lives, different cultures, different businesses, different markets, different everything. Yet they were doing things exactly the same way. So we figured it out. We know what the process is that these women do when it comes to leadership different than men. But here's the great thing, Dan. And this is the big aha for the end of the story, the end of this study, the story. It's not a girl thing. It's just something girls do, which means we can teach guys to do it. So if you look at this rise of women coming up, we know women outproduce men 3-1 when it comes to leadership and creating, formative things. Again, it's not knocking guys. It's just they're good. We know that thing's going to peak. Think of what's going to happen to the economy. Think about what's going to happen when people are riding this wave and these businesses are growing, these operations are growing, markets feel more confident, people start spending money again. We're going to see a giant leap in the market, better than we've ever seen before. And that's going to affect every living person on the planet. So the question is, do you feel lucky? Well, I don't think luck's a very good idea, but I do know luck favors the prepared. So you got to ask yourself, what can we do to start admiring what these ladies are doing, learn from them, and maybe as guys start applying some of their processes? Because like I said, it's not a girl thing. It's just something girls do. So we've got a few years to kind of get prepared for this. But when it happens, man, you talk about diversity and inclusion, this is real. And I'm not saying the others isn't. I'm just saying this is significant because we're going to see us join back together and say, okay, we're all on this same ship. We have unlimited abundance in front of us. And now we have leaders that aren't only going to take us there, they're going to show us how to do it so we can be better ourselves. Hence, how do you get to heaven? You help somebody else get there first. All of that is coming down the pipe. And it's really exciting.
Well, what's exciting? There's there's so much there that I want to unpack. But one of the things that really struck out to me is the fact that leadership does not require muscle mass. Correct. Leadership is something you can do well, regardless of how big you are, how strong you are. Yes, we talk about executive presence and being tall and standing. But you know what? At the end of the day, good leaders do certain things that exceptional leaders do, things that regular leaders don't do, and that's how they get that 3x. They are able to outperform other leaders. So what are what are some of the things that women leaders do that men need to do better? You said, I think one of the things you mentioned in the pre-show is by the time men get there, women are 3 steps ahead. They're doing 3 things before men even start. So they're already got a head start. So what are some of the things that you noticed that you can tell us?
Yeah, well, there is some wiring, right? Guys are wired generally, this is general assumptions. So I hope nobody calls in and says, well, I knew this one guy out of a million was different. Yeah, I know. But general assumptions, okay, is that guys like to fix things. If something's broken, we love it. We get in there, we get dirty, and we fix it. We usually fix it with authoritative stance, like, oh, here's how you fix it. And you tell the team, here's how you're going to fix it. Sometimes guys will even, if it doesn't need fixing, we'll break it just for the fun of being able to fix it, right? So guys like to fix things. We solve problems, but we do it through an authoritative stance. Women are the same way, except they don't use the same level of authority. What women do is they add 3 steps to the process before the man does. When the man says, I'm just going to fix it, he jumps in. So if somebody on a man's team comes to them generally and says, hey, we've got this problem, the male leader usually jumps in and just fixes it. Might do it with some grace, might really empower the team, but they are all about fixing it. The female does something radically different. Female leaders add 3 steps to the process, particularly when a team member comes up with a problem. The first thing a female leader does is she shows sympathy to the problem, not the person. She never shows sympathy to the person. So say you've got a ship coming in with some supplies, and it's stuck at the harbors in Savannah and it can't get out for whatever reason, or can't get in. It's a storm or a union strike or whatever. And the person comes up and says, oh my God, all of our supplies are stuck on a ship. What she does is acknowledges, yeah, that's a problem. I'm so sorry. That's tough. She doesn't ever associate the problem with the person. So you show sympathy to the problem. And then phase 2, you move in and you show empathy to the person. Look, I know that ship is stuck out there. There's problems with the ports and we can't get our supplies off the ship. That's not your problem. But how does that make you feel? I hope you're not losing sleep at this at night, because this isn't your fault. And I just want you to know, I get it. So think about that. Sympathy to the problem, but then empathy to the person. So the person receiving that goes, wow, she gets it. Yeah, I can't control that ship stuck in a harbor somewhere. And she connected with me. She knows that I care and I'm staying up and I'm worried about this. I might be worried about my job. I might just be worried because I care and I want to hit our production numbers. Who knows? But that empathy to the person is a big, big deal. But then here's the biggest difference between males and females. Then she says to that person roughly, hey, how would you solve this if this was you? I'm not going to tell you how to do it. How would you do it? If you had a magic wand and you could do anything over these next 48 hours to fix this, what would you do? And 90% of the time, that person who came to her with the problem knows how to fix it. But that person is so trained under male leadership to just be quiet and do what you're told when the guy tells you how to fix it. They're not used to what she says. When she says, hey, wait, how would you fix this if it was you? And the second they know, going back to why, that person is free to be themselves to her. There's a no judgment zone here. 9 out of 10 times, that person who had the problem knows how to fix it. And she'll tell the leader, this is what I would do. And the leader may sprinkle some wisdom on it, may say, okay, but maybe don't try to push yourself for 24 hours. Why don't you give yourself 48 hours, but go do it. So what she does is she gives that person permission to do their job. They're free to be themselves. They're a hero to the organization. They don't need a leader to fix it for them. Sometimes you do, but 9 out of 10 times they don't. But what happens is that person who came to you with a problem says, oh my gosh, they showed sympathy to the problem. They get it. They were empathetic toward me. They know how I feel. But most importantly, they respect me and they allow me to be me. And she just gave me permission to solve the problem. So that person feels something they don't normally feel, and they feel valued. And if a person is valued, then guess what? They are empowered to do whatever. And here's the real secret. Guess what happens next time that person has a problem? They don't stop, go running on, suck the energy out of the leadership. They sit there and go, hey, wait, I know what that problem is. I know it didn't have anything to affect on me, but guess what? I know how to fix it, so I'm going to fix it. So now that person is so empowered because they're valued, because leadership took the time to show sympathy to the problem, empathy to the person, and meeting them in the middle and giving them permission to be them, that person goes out and fixes things on their own, which frees up leadership to go think in new ways to sell more things to more people faster, right? And to do more of the bigger mission of what they're there to accomplish. So now leadership is free to grow and seek abundance. That person is free to be a hero, so they feel valued and they feel empowered. And you have an operational machine that's performing at such a high level. That's why they're 3X. It's because it's a real team. It's a real group of who are doing the hows, and they know why. And it's just an amazing thing. But like I said, Dan, it's not a girl thing. It's just something girls do. So if guys start doing this, it's not going to be 3X. It's going to be 10X or 100X. It's going to be an unstoppable machine that you can talk about AI, you can talk about robotics, it doesn't matter. It still comes down to the human quotient. It comes down to the human's confidence. It comes down to the buyer and what the check writer wants. And all that stuff works. And when all of it comes together in this soup of behavioral economics, and we can look to the future and go, brace yourself. Yes. Between the year 2028 and 2032, women are going to take over. But we all know they're better. But now we also know their secret. What would happen if everybody got on that same abundance train? Everybody created empowered teams where individuals felt valued. Dude, all you got to do is go sit back and relax and just let the machine take over. And we're going to see some enormous shifts, and it's going to be great. And it's something I'm excited for.
Well, I can't wait for you to hear the intro to my show, because one of the things we talk about is great leaders create teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. We talk about the 3 E's. You engage your teams, you empower them, and that's what gives them the energy to, just go run through a brick wall for you. You know, one of the things you talked about is when a person feels valued and empowered, we also talk about the fact that we want people to feel seen, heard, and understood. And so when you take the time to listen, you show sympathy to the problem, empathy to the person, and then you ask them for their input, now they're engaged. Now they feel empowered, and now they solve problems. And absolutely,
those 3 things are actually in the book, so that's really pretty good. You're right. It's seen, heard, and understood. Yes. And if a person feels that, then it's magical. And that's nothing new. And the same way with Perfect Plan, the same way with Here Come the Girls, it's nothing that we don't already know. It's just putting structure around the obvious, because we're really busy, right? We're a busy group of people. We are connected to people around the world. Those 8 billion people are, what was it used to be 6 degrees of separation is probably 3 now or 4, right? So we're pretty darn busy. So every once in a while you see something like that and you're like, oh, that's pretty simple, but I get it. And if they get it, then they understand it. And I tell people this all the time. Great teams are great because they understand what's happening, not because they know what's happening. You can teach anybody to know something.
Right.
Teach them to understand it and give them the opportunity to be empowered, seen, heard, understood, and valued so they can go out there and do it. They understand that. That's an unstoppable process. And it really is turn the valve up to what level of abundance that you want. It's that significant. So from a behavioral economics period, okay, even if I'm half wrong, it's so much better off than what we are right now. It's going to be great. But I don't think we're wrong. I think we're 100% correct on this. The math supports it. The social construct supports it. And thousands of interviews of unrelated women, female leaders, who were so unified in their conversation. They might have used different words here and there, but it was the same story. I told somebody though that, actually told my sons, I said, I felt like I was watching that old movie, Groundhog's Day with Bill Murray. It just kept repeating itself. And I would get to the point where I'm in an interview going, oh, let me guess. Now you're going to empower them. And it was kind of funny because they were like, how do you know? And I'm like, you're all telling me the same story, which supports why you're so amazing at this. And the beauty of it is that. Now, I'll tell you another thing that's very important about the women that we studied. They celebrated their femininity. They did not want to be in the boys' club. They didn't want to act like men. They didn't want to say, oh, I've got to be a real, you know what, to make it. They were free to be themselves. And they also celebrate men being themselves. So it was an amazing no judgment zone from them. And I don't know, it's just, it was important. I think it's going to be a big impact item, and I hope it helps a lot of people. So we're excited about it.
And I think we're positioned as a country, as a society, Western civilization, because we've given, we're advanced and to the point where, I think in college, women outnumber men. And so we empowered women to be in these positions. As the father of one of those senior directors at a Fortune 100, I know how powerful it can be for us to unleash that power on the market, that leadership power that's going to 3x and 10x, and for us to learn from them. In those places, in those third world places where women don't have a voice, they're going to be the ones that are going to be missing out because they don't have that 10x and 3x exponential growth that we're going to be able to reach by not only promoting these women into positions of leadership, but also learning from them so that all of us can do it. Again, taking that abundance mindset that you've talked about already.
Yeah. And those areas that are going to be slow to adapt, they will not be able to hold back forever. So I think this is going to be a big tipping point for some of these countries and these cultures that keep suppression and oppression there. It's going to change. So by the time our grandchildren, our granddaughters are of age where they're in their 50s and they're making a big impact on things, it's going to be such a radically different world. And I'm not saying it's always nirvana and everybody's going to be aware. I'm not saying it's going to be, Valhalla where everybody's walking around like warriors, but at the end of the day, we are going to be better. But just like any type of economic prosperity, there's bumps and grinds, there's ups and downs, there's things we can't predict. We never predicted the pandemic. We didn't know that was happening. Looking back on it, it's like, that was interesting, but we survived. I can't predict another pandemic. I cannot predict an alien invasion. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that as we continue on the trajectory, we're about to hit a point of hyper growth that's going to change the way we look at everything, which goes back to what we talked about earlier, Dan. We're going to be forced to change the way we think about how we think about our thinking. And in doing so, that's going to be a radical shift. And then you got these great minds, like you said, Hardy and Sullivan and all these wonderful people out there talking about it. It's just a matter now of structuring it and saying, okay, but how does that affect me? I own a little local deli. Does that mean I have to go hire all women? No, it means you got to hire the right people and the right fit. Back to why, right? Back to your process. But if you're aware of what women are doing in leadership and you're understanding why people respond to it, then maybe you can do that to your customers. Even as a dude, you can say, wait a minute, when a customer comes in and they're having a rough day, even if they're just buying a sandwich, I can be sympathetic to their problem. I can be empathetic to them as a person. And I can say, what we have, how can I help serve you in these next few minutes? So it's a process that we've learned from these women that's beyond leadership, because leadership is ultimately sales, right? So how do you use these techniques to help promote your brand, promote your products, and do it with the highest level of integrity and character? And if you can do that, I think the universe just has a way of bringing people into your life. And that level of success is something that breeds more success. Success breeds success. Enthusiasm breeds enthusiasm. Respect breeds more respect. So I think we're going to go through an inflection point. I think there's going to be a lot of noise, but I think this future is pretty darn bright, and
Man, I
I'm
love it.
excited. Here come the girls. I did have a lady come up to me in Hawaii last week. She was really sweet and very nice, and she said, "Hey, in today's world, the term girls, is that genderfying?" And I said, yeah, it is. You know, and she said, "Well, do you think that'll offend anybody?" And I said, "I really hope not." I said, "Let me tell you." I said, "Here's what you need to realize about this. The ladies," and it's a catchy title. I get that. It helps sell books, but it's true. Here come the girls. They're coming, and their time is here. But it's a celebration. It's not a gentrification. It's a celebration of what women do and how they can affect the world and how they will affect the world in such a positive way. And I said to her, and she was young. She looked like she was right out of college. She was so sweet. She was eager, very respectful lady. I mean, I'd hire that girl in a second. She was awesome at what she did. And she had the guts to come up to me after a presentation. She didn't know me and asked me that. And I thought, that's ballsy. I like this girl. You know, she's pretty sharp. But I told her, I said, here's how you got to look at it. Do you feel, or did your mother feel like she was always having to play and be a part of the boys club? And she said, yeah, the good old boys club especially. And I said, right. Guess what? Now it's time for the girls club. And you're going to decide which of the boys you're going to let in. And she's like, oh, well, I like that. I said, okay, so now it's okay to be gender, right? And she said, yeah, as long as I'm in charge. And I'm like, that's what I'm telling you. You're about to run the world. Sit back and relax. The entire world is going to be better off now because of this. And it's an exciting time. So we're going to have to wrestle with it. We're going to have to grapple. But at the end of the day, we're all going to help somebody get into heaven. And we're going to help them before we help ourselves. And life's going to be better off. And like you said, for your grandchildren, your granddaughters, and your grandsons, everybody is going to be better off with this economic shift. And I tell people, shift happens. It happens all the time. And we love to look backwards and talk about why it happened. But let's get ballsy and look to the future and say, this is going to happen. And when it does, what are we doing to be prepared about it today? And that's the opportunity. So work like yours, it all adds to the soup, right? So I appreciate you, man.
Well, we appreciate you, Don. This has been such a fantastic conversation. And I love that. I want to end on that note. What do you say we end the show on that note?
Sounds great to me. I appreciate you having me. And everybody should be part of your system. I can tell you from a behavioral economist, you've got this thing figured out. And just the ability to give somebody permission to be themselves, that's heaven right there.
Well, we thank you so much for being on, Don. Guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you give us some likes, give us some comments. We're going to premiere this episode as soon as we can because this message needs to get out. I know the book's coming out soon, Don. We'll get on your schedule. And guys, don't forget to wait to be with us next week for another premiere of the Lead Different podcast. Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.